Namaskar and welcome to our continued coverage of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Japan. I'm Mark Lynn and with me is Gautam Roy. Well, it's day 2 of this visit and India-Japan relations have entered a dynamic new phase, especially in technology and economic cooperation. Japan has pledged 10 trillion yen, that's about 68 billion US dollars in investments into India over the next decade.
And yes, the investment spans artificial intelligence, semiconductors, rare earths, green energy and carbon credits, reflecting a broad and visionary agenda. Prime Minister Modi has called Japan a tech powerhouse and India a talent powerhouse. There's a renewed digital partnership with AI, semiconductor supply chain cooperation, quantum computing, robotics and clean energy tech.
Yes, indeed. And the Prime Minister travelled to Sendai from Tokyo in a bullet train. The Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed rail project is very much on track. And, you know, next generation mobility partnership, it now includes work on ports, aviation, shipbuilding and the like. All this building greater economic security, which will energize the private sectors of both countries.
But a major takeaway, Mark, from this visit is the target of even 500,000 people exchanges over the next 5 years, which will include 50,000 skilled Indian workers contributing to Japan's economy. Prime Minister Modi will also be visiting the Tokyo Electron Semiconductor factory here in Sendai. The company has a strategic tie-up with Tata Electronics to strengthen India's semiconductor ecosystem. But before we bring you our special coverage on the PM's Japan visit, which is India-Japan scaling new heights, here's a reminder of the top stories right now.
PM Modi and Japan Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba travel to visit a semiconductor factory in Sendai on a bullet train. Prime Minister Modi gets an enthusiastic reception upon reaching Sendai.
Trump's trade strategy is deemed illegal by a US appeals court, allows the tariffs to continue till October, anticipating US Supreme Court appeal. The US President dubs the order incorrect, asserting the levies remain in effect.
France and Germany call for more pressure on Russia, and this is amid Putin's reluctance to meet Zelensky. Zelensky urges leader-level security guarantees for Ukraine with US involvement.
And in sports, India's Satvik Sairaj Rankireddy and Chirag Shetty reached the men's double semi-finals of the Badminton World Championships in Paris. PV Sindhu loses in the quarter-final.
Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Japan has added fresh momentum to diverse areas of cooperation between the two countries. Day 2 is high on technology quotient.
Yes, Prime Minister Modi and his Japanese counterpart Shigeru Ishiba will witness a semiconductor manufacturing facility in the Miyagi Prefecture. DD India's Shubhendu Ghosh explains the importance of the technology partnership between the two Asian giants.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Japan has added fresh momentum to diverse areas of cooperation between the two nations. Day 2 is high on technology quotient. Prime Minister Modi and his Japanese counterpart Shigeru Ishiba will witness a semiconductor manufacturing facility. Semiconductors are the essential building blocks of modern electronics, acting as the hidden brains that make devices work. The India-Japan partnership has tremendous potential to offer the world reliable and credible alternatives to global supply chains of critical technologies. Earlier on Friday, addressing the India-Japan Economic Forum, Prime Minister hailed the partnership between the two nations in critical tech like semiconductors.
जापान टेक पावर हाउस है और भारत एक टैलेंट पावर हाउस है। भारत ने एआई, सेमीकंडक्टर, क्वांटम कंप्यूटिंग, बायोटेक और स्पेस में बोल्ड और एम्बिशियस इनिशिएटिव लिए हैं जापान की टेक्नोलॉजी और भारत का टैलेंट मिलकर इस सदी के टेक रिवॉल्यूशन का नेतृत्व कर सकते हैं.
In 2021, the Indian government approved Semiconductor mission with a 76,000 crore outlay. From 2023 to 2025, rapid setup of major facilities by domestic and foreign firms with significant investments. India-Japan Semiconductor Supply Chain Partnership started in 2023. Japan holds significant global market share of around 30% in semiconductor manufacturing equipment. Japan occupies about 50% of the market share in semiconductor materials. Establishment of a semiconductor OSAT in Sanand, Gujarat by the Japanese semiconductor firm Renesas Electronics. Tokyo Electron and Tata Electronics have launched a strategic partnership to establish a semiconductor ecosystem in India. Japan introduced the world to the concept of new high speed railways in 1964 and continues to be a global leader, pushing the boundaries of speed, capacity, and safety on its Shinkansen lines. India's first bullet train project is the Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed rail corridor, a 508-kilometer route connecting two major cities with technical and financial assistance from Japan using Shinkansen train technology. The project is currently under construction, with the Gujarat portion expected to be completed by late 2027 and the entire corridor by late 2029. In the spirit of strategic partnership between India and Japan, the new generation E10 Shinkansen train will be introduced simultaneously in India and Japan. The bullet train project, in many ways, symbolizes the core values of India-Japan relations, values of trust, speed, and innovation. Shubhendu Ghosh's report, DD India, Tokyo.
Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, with his Japanese counterpart Shigeru Ishida, they traveled to Sendai on a bullet train, and Prime Minister Modi was, as usual, very excited. He was riding on the bullet train, and he discussed with his Japanese counterpart how he felt about traveling on the bullet train.
And on arrival at the Sendai station, Prime Minister Modi was greeted by Modi-san welcome chants by people. Their destination will be a major semiconductor facility, as we mentioned, in the Miyagi Prefecture. The two leaders will witness a semiconductor manufacturing facility, one which has a tie-up here in India as well to set up a unit.
And taking greater strides in the steadfast India-Japan ties, Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with the governors of 16 prefectures in Tokyo on Saturday. Prime Minister Modi highlighted the potential of states, prefectures collaboration. The Prime Minister urged action under the State Prefecture Partnership Initiative. It was launched during the 15th India-Japan Annual Summit for Shared Progress.
Now, yes, the discussions focused on ways to further deepen the growing partnerships between Indian states and Japanese prefectures in the fields of technology, innovation, investment, skills, startups and SMEs. So, Mark, perhaps from sister cities we could move further and graduate to sister states and prefectures.
Indeed. And we can see that the Prime Minister had interacted individually also with many of those governors. Now, Prime Minister Modi took to social media. He said, and I quote him now, "This morning in Tokyo, interacted with the governors of 16 prefectures of Japan. State prefecture cooperation is a vital pillar of India-Japan friendship. This is also why a separate initiative on it was launched during the 15th annual India-Japan summit yesterday. There is immense scope to cooperate in areas like trade, innovation, entrepreneurship, and more. Futuristic sectors like startups, tech and AI too can be beneficial.
And the Indian flavor is pretty bold in Japan. A special yoga session was organized on Saturday as well at the observation deck of the iconic Sky Tree in Tokyo. The session took place in honor of Prime Minister Modi's Japan visit. At over 600 meters, Sky Tree is said to be the tallest broadcasting tower in the world.
Earlier on Friday evening, the iconic Sky Tree Tower, it was lit up in the colors of the Indian tricolor. This is in honor of the Prime Minister's visit and India-Japan friendship.
Let me now bring in my colleague Shubhendu Ghosh, who's been tracking all the developments related to Prime Minister Modi's Japan visit, either be in Tokyo or in Sendai. Shubhendu, I understand you are in Tokyo at the moment, but the Prime Minister is in Sendai, and I believe that a fairly big ticket collaboration that India and Japan have well initiated rather recently relative to all the kind of other collaborations that India and Japan have had through the decades. They are witnessing how it's going to perhaps work one day in India as it's already working in Japan.
Absolutely. Hello, Gautam and Mark. The manner in which the ambitious roadmap has been put forth by Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, the next generation of engagement, next generation of development is on the cards as far as India-Japan partnership is concerned. Day 2 of Prime Minister's visit is significant. He's going to get this first-hand experience of the manner in which these mega factories, of course, he's been to different parts of the world and has seen that happening. But Japan is one place which has particular advantages, unique processes, work culture that also is responsible for its sort of economic prowess and development. So at the semiconductor plant, finer details of semiconductor ecosystem, what it takes are something that will be there for Prime Minister to see firsthand. That's also the kind of leadership that he displays to get that first-hand information so that when he goes back home, he's able to put those into practice as well. Remember, it's a very exciting phase for the semiconductor ecosystem in India as well. The target is that by the end of this year, 2025, the first made in India chips are going to be ready. And here the partnership with Japan, the kind of investment that we've been talking about to the tune of 10 trillion yen in the coming decade, is going to play a remarkable role in fact, realizing the dream of making India a semiconductor powerhouse in the coming days.
Shubhendu, in what areas are the Japanese really pioneers or really ahead of the game in the semiconductor space? Are the semiconductors more designed, let's say, for automobiles, for EVs, things like that?
Mark, we have to see that Japanese application of technology is quite expansive. The demographic realities of Japan have also in a very interesting way translated into the manner in which they sort of work with machine, in which things are automated. And therefore, the application, whether you have to buy a can of water from a shop, or you have to buy a ticket, or you buy a robot to get your house cleaned, all these implementations require advanced semiconductors. And Japan, therefore, is a very, very interesting destination. They have, more than any other country, actually put to use very advanced electronic semiconductors to use. And therefore, the engagement, the learnings that India can derive from interacting with Japan is going to be significant. In the coming future, of course, the kind of input that Japan is looking for, of trained, skilled workforce to take their own potential to the next level. And that is where India comes in the form of scale, in the form of market, in the form of manufacturing prowess. So it is a sort of win-win partnership that Prime Minister very succinctly put. Is a powerhouse of technology coming together with a powerhouse of talent.
Certainly. And this partnership, Shubhendu, has been extended to the domain of artificial intelligence as well. India and Japan have pledged to work together to tackle that particular frontier of technology as well. It's seen both as a challenge as well as an opportunity. So do you feel that that is also something that will lead to many, many revolutionary partnerships in the coming days?
Absolutely. And I think both countries recognize that although we have already entered the age of AI, artificial intelligence, but as far as regulation is concerned, it is still at a very nascent stage if we look at global understanding of how to live with AI. So in that sense, there is a lot of investment of thought and processes into the manner in which this almost expansive power of AI can be regulated to make it a force for greater good. And that is where the investment is going at the moment, very importantly, because once that structure is in place, once we know the manner in which we can use the power of AI in the short-term and long-term future, the application is going to be more organized. So that is when I spoke to the industry leaders, that is one area they said they're going to focus. And Prime Minister, when he, and along with his Japanese counterpart, when he launches that Digital Partnership 2.0, the focus of it is to make sure that India and Japan are not just at par, but are in a sort of leadership position to shape the destiny of this emerging technology-driven world, whether Asia or the larger region.
Also, Shubhendu, with regard to manpower mobility, now there is a lot more scope for Indian, semi-skilled and skilled workers to move to Japan. What is the procedure that they would have to go through to try and reach there? Is Digital Partnership 2.0 also part of the process of application?
It certainly would be, Mark. In perhaps time to come, we'll know the specific processes, specific ways in which one would become qualified to be that Japan-ready workforce that Prime Minister talks about. But what is significant is that we've been talking about the cultural connect, the warmth and friendship that the two nations share. So there is an atmosphere of welcome, which is significant in the current geopolitics, which is dominated by a sort of protectionism and sort of anti-immigrant sentiments in different parts of the world, especially the West. So in such a context, here's a country which says we want people from India, the talented, skilled people of India to come and run our factories, to partner with us. We want to come to your country, partner with you, manufacture in your country. So this is an amazing platform which is already ready for India and Japan to take it to the next level of development. Japan-ready workforce is an indication of a greater opportunity for Indian skilled workers in Japan. Needless to say, particularly in the area of emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, and more. We were speaking to the Indian ambassador to Japan earlier, and he said that despite such close ties and warmth between the peoples, there are about less than 2,000 Indian students who choose Japan as an education destination, although there are world-class institutions here, the kind of advances that have made in technology, where 1.5 million Indian students are studying abroad in different parts, only about 1,500 are in Japan. That number needs to change. So the policies, the vision that the leaders have put forth, I think it is going to really address that very concern that any doubts that Indian students, for example, had in their minds, now I hope would be more assured that here are the leaders, the prime ministers of the two countries saying that we want you to be able to travel to that friendly country, get educated there, learn there, and even find an opportunity to work and contribute to this partnership.
Yes, that would be the way to go. At least one of the ways to take this partnership forward. Shubhendu, I'll ask you to stick around because I'd like to also introduce our panelists, eminent panelists of experts to help us understand the significance of the PM's ride on a bullet train to Japan, as well as also the India-Japan Semicon partnership. We have Ashok Sajjanhar with us, former senior diplomat, as well as Professor Shabani Roy Chaudhary, professor at the School of International Studies at the Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi. Welcome to you both. Ashok Sajjanhar, if I could ask you first, what are your first impressions from what has happened yesterday in terms of how India and Japan have presented a vision really to take the partnership to, well, it's more than an incremental jump perhaps, with coupling it with what's happening today?
Yeah, thank you very much. What I would say as opening remarks, it's a very significant visit. This is the 15th annual summit between the two countries. But the 14th one was held in 2022, so it's been about 3-4 years ago that it was done. And the global circumstances under which the visit is taking place, I think that is very different, that is very unusual, that is very special today. And in that context, dealing with all the challenges and using all the opportunities, transforming the challenges into opportunities. I think that is what we have seen in these two countries. They are big democracies, they are big economies, and the way they have, in a variety of areas that they have engaged in the partnership in terms of whether it is the economic security initiative, because that is what we are talking about, in terms of the weaponization of supply chains that has been taking place, in terms of that is from the western neighbor of Japan, from China. We've seen that in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. After that, we saw how the supply chains were weaponized. And in more recent terms, even India has been at the receiving end of that, whether it is, and not only India, there are a large number of countries in terms of exports of critical materials, rare earths, magnets, as far as India is concerned, fertilizers, tunnel boring machines, there are a whole host of items. So how to have your economies resilient and make reliable supply chains? India and Japan, and along with Australia, had entered into a resilient supply chain initiative in 2021, just after the COVID-19 pandemic. But of course, right now, their whole area has developed and has evolved. And if you look also at how the tariffs have been weaponized from across the Atlantic, I think that is also a challenge. So whether it is economic security initiative, it is security and defense, to deal with the emerging challenges in the Indo-Pacific, I think that is a huge takeaway from this. Mark, what you had said about 10 trillion yen of investment, private sector investment into India, that translates into about $70 billion over the next 10 years. That's going to be huge, because if you see the investment from 2000 till about now, it has been about $40 billion. So we are talking virtually, 1.8 times, 1.7 times of that over the next 10 years. Indeed. And the areas that have been identified, that we've been talking about, whether it is semiconductors, it is quantum computing, it is climate change, it is AI, all these. So I think this is, I think the statement by the Prime Minister was very illustrative, that Japan is a tech powerhouse and India is a talent powerhouse. So we can provide scale to whatever is happening. Indeed. And possibly the last word that I could say is that it is also a futuristic plan that has been set up. 10-year vision, 10-year roadmap in terms of taking our economic cooperation and partnership forward. I think that will stand both, not only the two countries and the people of the two countries in good stead, but also the region, as well as peace, security and prosperity in the world.
Professor Roy Chaudhary, when we look at the train ride, they've just had that train ride, the symbolism that comes out of it, also the diplomatic message perhaps. Infrastructure is key in this relationship, and we're talking about some serious futuristic infrastructure. What kind of a message do you think comes out of that, a Prime Minister traveling with Prime Minister Ishiba on that train ride, and put it into context for us?
Sendai is one of the major new industrial zone of Japan. Not only is it he's traveling to see the semiconductor industry, but there is also a training institute for the what they call as Japan National Railways. They have a training institute around there. In fact, training for engine operators of bullet train is already on. We already had, I think, around 15 of them going there for training. So it does show to the civilian of both the countries that this is a very important agenda for both Japan and India. We must not forget that India's bullet train is also an agenda for showcasing this to the rest of the region. And Japan is obviously hopeful that with India's Ahmedabad-Mumbai bullet train operations, they might also get some inroads into African countries. So these are all, just not one-off. There would be much more that would happen once we get forward with only this particular Ahmedabad-Mumbai. So there is I personally feel over a period of time, with the kind of investment that we are expecting from Japan, which has already been said very well, that 1.8 times more increase, if our country domestically can absorb this investment, we are, I think, on track to become number 2, number 1 also of the...
But at least it's been demonstrated that a certain amount of investment, both Japan can provide, it can live up to its promise, and India can accommodate it. And now it's just being a little more, twice as much ambitious almost.
And also the fact that, it's a private investment coming in, it basically shows that the Japanese business is feeling very comfortable to be in India because of our political stability, because our economic growth. We've also just now projected an 8.4% growth in our economy. So I think all this put together shows that the private investment is finally coming to India, which has always been a long-term projection by the JBIC, that is Japan Bank of International Cooperation. Probably now it will become a medium-term to short-term investment option.
Yes.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, the train, the bullet train that we are expected to have is going to be the E10 version, which is the latest thing. So
they'll be introduced simultaneously in India.
Yes, yeah. So that also sends out a signal that India probably is ready for the latest.
No, absolutely. I think the Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed railway project, that is on E2 and E5, the earlier technology that was being used. Now, this is E10 technology is being currently developed, and it is going to be put into operation in 2030. So it's going to be introduced simultaneously, both in India as well as in Japan, and it is actually going to be modulated to meet Indian conditions and Indian needs and requirements. So I think that is very important. If you remember, when this project was signed, the Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed railway project, at that time there were a large number of question marks, there were a large number of doubts that were expressed. Does India need such a project? Because our basic aim and our basic focus should be to feed the millions and to provide jobs and employment to the millions. Do we really need to go into that high-tech area? And I think at that time the government and Prime Minister Modi himself had very categorically stated that for technological upgradation, you have to introduce such technologies. And I think while speaking about this in Japan to the business leaders and the captains of industry yesterday, this is what he said, new technology was introduced in India in the 80s when Maruti Suzuki came here. And you see where it has led us. And the experience of Japan coming to India in the area of manufacturing has been very positive, has been very encouraging. So I think the introduction of E10 and of course the introduction of this Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed railway project, 508 kilometers next year, I think it's going to be on rails at running at a speed of 320 kilometers per hour, which is, for Indian standards, it is very, very high. And E10 will be running even at a higher speed of about 420 kilometers per hour. So I think this technological upgradation, as in one of the earlier, when talking about Viksit Bharat, what the Prime Minister had said, that, India had missed out on the Industrial Revolution train, because India was at that time a colony of the British. So we could not take full advantage of it. But today we are free, and today we will be at the vanguard of the technological revolution, because that is what is going to determine what the positioning of different countries is. And definitely E10 and the other technologies, semiconductor, AI that we are talking about, that will play a very significant role in taking the country forward.
I just want to stick to trains for a while, because India already now has, Professor Roy Chaudhary, a network of semi-high speed trains, the Vande Bharats. Do you feel that that is also a big opportunity? I mean, this is a high speed project. It has its own modalities there, costs and everything. So everything can't be high speed. But perhaps some of the technology can be applied to expand the semi-high speed network as well, and perhaps even take it to freight and cargo.
Definitely, I think the Vande Bharat is also a great example of semi-speed thing, and it has become very popular. If you travel by it, at least for a person who's traveled in Japan, I feel it's almost similar to what I experience in Japan. The speed might be less. What is also important is, I think we've not worked on using cargo networking system, which is caters to what is called just-in-time concept of Japan. And with these kind of changes, I'm sure cargo would also increase. But I think what Japan is also looking at is waterways, our riverways, because this is usually cheaper. It has lesser issues of carbon emissions. So Japan is very keen to also promote waterways within India. And I think this is one place where a lot of new projects would turn up, considering the kind of $68 billion that we are seeing being invested. I think waterways would be one connectivity that has not been in the forefront so far, will come into the forefront.
And this will also be in the domain which urban transport is moving. It will be smoke-free and mostly electric?
Exactly. It is because Japan already has it within itself that they've always considered, if you look at their energy policy, that the waterways is supposed to be the cleanest, cheapest, and only a little more time consuming in Japan. But I think in Indian context, it might not really be that difficult because Japan has a much more difficult waterways navigation system than ours. We are much more, if you see the Ganga, especially if you move from Delhi to say Kolkata, the entire route can be very smooth in the sense it's very steady water flow, not what Japan faces. So if they are optimistic that they could also do a good job with waterways, that is in plains, but also in the northeast, they're very keen to develop a waterways such that in case our diplomatic relationship goes back on track with Bangladesh, then there would be a very good waterway system available for the northeast to plug into the Southeast Asia's economic productivity system.
Professor Roy Chaudhary, sticking to the same point a little bit, what sort of changes would we need to make in urban planning or, perhaps for our terrain to try and reach the levels with, after all, Japan is, dealing with earthquake-resistant infrastructure in all these places, and also perhaps, a certain sense of punctuality on their trains, things that perhaps we are not too used to in our country.
Yeah, punctuality is a different thing. Let's not get into that. But I'm really not an urban planning person.
Yeah.
But
you've traveled on the trains, that's why, and you traveled here too. That's what I.
So, what I would when I read through the papers, what I really liked was that we are looking at domestic waste management system. Japan's domestic waste management is scale apart from rest of the world. The way they segregate domestic waste, right from the citizen level to the community level, and then to the where it goes for different activities like recycling, etc. It's a class apart, and I think that we put it into our agenda that we would be looking at domestic waste management is, I think, something that has been going on for the last 10 years academically or at the policy making level. It's now featured here. As far as urban planning goes, I think what we would see over time is once we get our urban network, the metro systems in various cities in place, I think what we would be looking at is the feeder, because in India, I think the feeding system to the metro network has been little, tacky, or it's not as clean as what is it in most of the other countries. In that respect, again, I think Japan's EV vehicles would become very important, and I'm sure since we're looking at 68 billion private investments, some ODA investment is going to happen. That is generally a Japan style of working.
And Japan is not like all in on EVs as well. It's got a good mix of everything, even hydrogen for that matter.
Exactly. Hydrogen was very, very up on their policy at some time, but I see it receding in the last 1 year or so. Otherwise, they were looking at hydrogen projects.
In urban transport, India and Japan are fairly aligned.
Yeah, we're extremely well aligned, and I think our Delhi metro system has become the forerunner in training that they can do it out here. They're very, very optimistic with infrastructure connectivity and even with the roadways and the inclusion of a smart city concept as they go along their infrastructure development, which I think is extremely important since we put a new MOU where we are talking about environmental cooperation. So I think this will get memorandums of these kind along with the basic infrastructure connectivity option will all come together very well.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, also, with regard to the Prime Minister meeting all those governors and putting into context urban planning.
To trains right now.
But they're also involved with the trains, aren't they? Aren't the governors also involved with management of the local setups?
Yes.
Ambassador Sajanhar, I mean, in the context we're talking really about the networks of trains and everything else and how we are going to replicate that in India under their system and our system, and now their governors talking to perhaps our chief ministers in the course of time.
Yeah, no, I think the chief ministers have been traveling to Japan pretty frequently, pretty regularly. And so I think they have also been like to many other countries. But now there is this focus of a partnership between prefectures and states in India. Now this is an experiment that we have done with a large number of other countries. That is in terms of sub-national level administration interacting with each other. I remember when I was in Moscow, we had a large number of these republics and states from Russia, and they were partnering with Indian states. Meaning, of course, in the past they used to have, you know, sister city relationships, sister state relationships, so that there is a greater focus on each other. There is, of course, we used to look at complementarities between the different states, and here, I guess in this case, it would be between different prefectures of Japan and different states of India as to what are their competencies. Is it in the area of tourism? Is it in the area of business? Is it in the area of technology? Is it in the area of innovation? Is it in the area of training? So there is a huge spectrum over which we can see, but I think this is an excellent initiative. And you know, just mentioning Mark about train and Gautam also, because I think that seems to be the flavor of the morning today. That
we moved to semiconductors already.
I'm
Our
sure
panel is telling us to move on to semiconductors because they're playing that graphic now.
Okay, I'm sure.
But yeah, I wanted to ask you about, you know, you've traveled extensively. You've been traveling even now, even after you know, your services ended fairly extensively. You must have traveled in trains a lot as well. Even in the Western world, Japan is a different case altogether, because once I had travelled to Scotland and I was told that why did you book a train ticket? It's very unreliable. And in Japan, that's not the case at all.
No, absolutely. And you know, I can tell you of my recent visit, meaning I was traveling from Barcelona to London to Gatwick, and you know, now even in India, we are quite used to having air travel on time. You know, you're talking about punctuality. And as far as not so much, I don't know so much about the train travel, but air travel, we have got so used that it will be absolutely punctual. And there I reached the Barcelona International Airport, and it, you know, the flight was delayed by 2 hours. And this is after we had been asked to line up at the departure gate for sort of, you know, boarding.
Oh, that's terrible.
So yeah, so I think there, and then I asked people, and this was you know, good Iberian Airways partnering with British Airways, that the flight was there. They said yes, the flights do sort of, you know, get delayed, but not by too much. So it was 2 hours, it was not too bad. But as far as Japan is concerned, I think punctuality is something that is very critical. We are also getting into that area. That is my feeling, that even as far as the train
all of our management guys know Six Sigma and everything.
Yes, I guess, you know, they are all trained in that, and now maybe it will increase even further. But yes, I think this is transportation is a very important element. EVs are very important elements. You know, this digital partnership 2.0 that we have signed, whether it is, you know, also to do with climate change, that is again very dear to both Japan and to India. India getting on to whatever, you know, by 2030, we are going to definitely move much higher in terms of production of renewable energy.
Nuclear energy is 100 gigawatts by 2030.
2047.
2047, sorry.
That's 2047, 100 gigawatts. So, and this 500 gigawatts by 2030 renewables.
Correct.
So, and India is the only country amongst the G20 nations which has already met its Paris Accord commitment. So I think we are moving in that direction, slowly, but definitely surely and steadily.
So let's move to semiconductors then. And well, what can we expect, ma'am, from this visit to the semiconductor plant? Is there a certain message coming out of it that, you know, I mean, India, of course, has ambitious goals for semiconductor production, but we are also, as a technology dependent country and a digital dependent country, really needing these things in large quantities, but we also want to export. We're looking really big.
Yeah, if you look at where we stand with semiconductor technology, we are not really on the up end, all of us know that. And I think what is definitely being, if you look at this 50,000 semi-skilled and skilled workers going, there's a sizable number of them who are going to go for this technological thing. We are looking at STEM research level students going, and there's a lot of work happening which they call the Lotus program right now, which is basically targeting the IITs and regional engineering colleges, the best of the students to go there and get there. So I think we're upgrading our technological skill as far as semiconductor industry goes. If once we are able to get that thing in place, I think we can upscale our you know, in the value chain, we can go much higher up to what we are today. The Assam semiconductor unit is going to be our you know, first attempt at going in the right direction, I feel. Being in the Northeast India, it plugs into our Act East policy very well. And you know, being a green field, it has its advantages. All these things we talk about, extraordinary human resource management practices that Japan has imbibed into their culture, which is imbibed into their industry, which definitely had a say, you know, impacted their economic growth. Maybe as a green field area in Assam, we can do those factors, which we have already seen Maruti Suzuki changing the entire game, even with respect to human resource management in automobile industry. So there is a lot that can happen. There is lots of ways to make it happen, which is very easily visible in the kind of memorandums as well as the joint statement that has come out yesterday.
Basil Sarjana, what kind of capabilities does Japan really have in terms of semiconductors? We mostly associate that with Taiwan because that's where most of the world's semiconductors are manufactured. But in terms of developing the tech, designing the machines that are used to make these chips, what kind of capabilities does Japan have? Are they substantial? And because this partnership with Japan will not only help in terms of bringing capital, because there's that goal of 10 trillion yen, but also technology and capabilities.
No, absolutely. I think it is technology which India is looking for, and Japan produces, as I understand, about 30% of the global semiconductor market, and in terms of the high-end chips, that is what it is coming, you know, what are nano, micro, nano chips in terms of designing, in terms of production, manufacturing. I think all that is coming from there, and I think India has been, Gautam, in the market for technology. You would recall that when the Prime Minister had gone to Singapore, Singapore also has a huge
we'll have a higher level visit from Singapore as well very soon.
Also, but even during the last visit of the Prime Minister, that was one area of focus. And if you remember in 2023, when Prime Minister Modi had visited as the state guest to the United States, at that time also, you know, it was Micron Inc. which had said, you know, $2.5 billion of investment that is going to come to India. And I am quite confident that notwithstanding, you know, the current sort of dislocation in bilateral relations, that as far as those areas of collaboration and cooperation are concerned, they will continue to move forward. We have seen in the India-US even the 2+2 intersessional dialogue taking place. So I think that will come from there. But coming back to Japan, I think that has a huge possibility. As far as Taiwan is concerned, that also has huge potential. We are working with that. We are working with Foxconn also and TSM, you know, in Taiwan to get them also. But Japan is, I think there is a very keen interest as far as the Japanese industry now is concerned. So far, they have been, you know, very reluctant because of business practices, ease of doing business in India, working conditions, and I think they had a very ready market available on the West, that is China. But
Right.
now the relations with China becoming what they are, I'm sure they would be looking at newer markets. And here India has also changed. You know, if you look at, let's say, ease of doing business, we have not been getting that report from the World Bank for some years now, and I'm sure all your listeners are aware as to what is the reason why it was stopped. But when this government came, Prime Minister Modi's government came, we were 143rd on the ease of doing business. And within about 5 years or so, we were able to come to 42nd. Not a very commendable place to be in, but still a significant jump and improvement. So, and I'm sure all these, other initiatives that have been taken over the last few years, if the report was made again, we would have, we would have traveled much further, because obviously, we are making all these changes to make our business and our economy more investor friendly, rather than sort of, just for in terms of what the international recognition
And we have the next
is.
generation reforms also kicking in by the
Also,
end of the year.
whether it is with GST, whether it is with the radical economic reforms now that are required, that is as a response to whatever is happening around in the world. So I think definitely those changes are taking place, and the whether it is JBIC or it is JETRO, both of them have said that the Japanese companies which are in India, about 1,400 of them, that they are looking at expansion.
80% was the data that
Was
Prime Minister
data,
gave out
yes,
yesterday.
and about 75% are profitable.
Indeed.
So those are positive figures. So that means Japanese industry is looking positively at India, and these areas, high tech, semiconductor, AI that we've been talking about, I'm sure these would be prime areas for getting investment from there.
Professor Roy Chaudhary, being an expert on Japan, perhaps you can help us understand why Japan is a stagnant economy, 30 years plus. It has all these leadership roles, even in semiconductors, in automobiles, in electronics, and I mean, it holds its leadership position continuously. Of course, it's declining in semiconductors. But why is it still not able to grow?
It's a 1-hour lecture to say why stagnant economy. If one has to go back, it goes back to the bubble burst, where both financial market as well as the real estate market was impacted. And that was actually where the whole problem began, because less money was in the economy. People started feeling the heat of not being able to, sort of make money out of what money they were making. And in the first round, what happened was, while the domestic market shrunk, most of these lead corporates were all well established outside, so they continued to grow, but the country's economy shrunk. That's why the first decade was basically not so impacted by the companies. But by the second decade, they had competitors in the outside market, especially if we don't have to go far. Within India itself, they lost to Korean companies, both in electronics as well as in automobiles. And I think that was the shake-up that took a long time. The political system changes being much more difficult in Japan for their own culture of creating consensus, etc. So they had a thing, and in between all this, the democratic decline also happened. So putting all this together, the economy went into what is called the stagflation and this, stagnant economy. Abenomics was one thing that was supposed to revive the economy. It went in right direction for some time, but the COVID sort of again regressed the whole thing backwards. Since then, they've also done a lot of monetary easing as part of Abenomics. There was a monetary easing, so they pushed money into the economy to circulate more money. However, it did not get into circulation of buying. People are very oriented towards saving. The same saving which during the economic miracle allowed for larger domestic investments happening. This time round, the savings became, there was no investment opportunities that was created. So there was a mix of various issues that actually led to this. They are very.
But what about their investments abroad? I mean, and investments in countries like India.
They make
They've had good
substantial
returns as well.
investments abroad, but you don't see it happening domestically.
They're not allowing it back into the domestic economy.
And then more importantly, there are lots of non-tariff ways of not allowing foreign companies to enter Japan, which is slowly being opened up. There was an issue of agriculture imports. There is complex of situations.
Is that the reason why Japan is changing now, and a big change can be seen in its attitude towards, say, letting talent from outside to come in?
Talent from outside is coming in, but there are lots of restrictions out there. But with
that's like to be eased now?
I'm not so confident that it will get eased, because the current elections, there was one party which made a sizable impact among domestically by just promoting this, that it's Japan for Japanese only. But I personally feel this policy will be looked into more deeply, and what they would want is right talent match. They wouldn't want to just allow migration to happen from on all respects. They will do a matching of talent that is required by the country to what they can get from outside. I think that would be how they will go.
And how serious is the problem of the aging population?
It's pretty severe in the sense it's already, it is going to impact the economy but the question that is being asked out there is, would they go more into robotics and AI oriented, which their Society 6.0 is talking about, or whether there would be a good mix of giving some amount of face to the thing, because the country, older generations have technological challenges. They are sending old people to actually learn to use computers, learn to do online transactions, and they're not very comfortable doing it. They need a face. So effectively that balance will have to be worked out by their country. But I think opportunity is strong for India to plug in at this point of time, and getting as we've been talking about, getting them Japan ready. The skills should be Japan ready to be able to migrate to Japan.
This transition that is unfolding in Japanese society, Ashok Sajana, do you feel that it is coming at the right time for this sort of partnership that India and Japan are developing?
You know, I could really see it in the context of the global changes, because whatever is happening as far as the Japanese economy is concerned, exactly the same thing is happening in the European economy, and this is the way that they are also responding to it. That is the way they are reacting to it. Of course, there are very many differences that I've seen for myself. For instance, here in India, when we see there is so much of multitasking that people do. But as far as the West is concerned, and I'm sure Japan also is concerned, that is not something that people are looking at. And so there is much greater in terms of focus on technology, use of robotics, and the fact that India has so much to offer. And that is why, we have been able to sign all these mobility agreements with a large number of countries, meaning we do see what is happening as far as the United States is concerned. There, of course, there is much greater inhibition as far as getting foreign migrants, laborers, even technically qualified people like students who are coming into the United States and who have gone into training and studies and education. Their limits are also their stay is also being limited there. But that is not definitely the case as far as many countries in Europe are concerned. And I think Japan also, it is really looking to getting more people. They will have to decide for themselves what is a good balance, what is a good mix between the two of them, so that their efficiency does not suffer, and that human element in terms of whether it is manufacturing or services, that is present to
I want to take up that number of students as well from India and Japan, very, very low, 1,500 to 2,000. Why do you think that has been the case so far, and do you think that is likely to change now? Because we've had, and we can't say it's just because of language, because we've had thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of students going to Russia, for example, to study medicine and other technical fields. Why not in Japan?
My reading of this is goes like this. The Indian citizens, parents, who are going to be the ones who send their children initially, they're very West-oriented, take it. And therefore, if it was not West, we had a great partnership with Russia. The Russian education was cheaper. It was an abroad education. That worked. Currently,
So
I
cost
think
is also a factor.
cost affects. But currently, Japan's education in all fields in higher education is cheaper than USA. That's there. However, living conditions in Japan, there is a lot of compromise. And I think here the soft power comes in. I think current generation of young children as well as teenagers are much attuned towards Japan because of the anime, etc., that they grow up on. But the parents themselves have hesitation about Japan, and they do not understand how a Japanese higher education can plug into the international system.
Okay.
Japan has walked a lot in this direction. They have large number of courses now in English, and their courses are all matched to international courses. They've plugged into international system by creating exchange programs, etc. So it is unfair that we do not look at Japan as an option. We need to educate the school-going children and their parents to understand this factor. And I think over a period of time, because it's a non-English speaking country, the hesitation is there, which needs to be, that's why the education seeking, short-term mobility programs like, homestay exchange programs during summer vacations for children, etc., can help, give a better image of Japan as an education center.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, India and Japan together, can they take on the Chinese economy? I mean, it's being looked at as a counterweight to China in various other ways, but why not from this point of view?
Okay, I think let's look at it, meaning I'll make it response in two sort of, parts. One is, I don't think we should really be either comparing or confronting anyone else. We should really be looking at our own strengths. Meaning, if I were to look at the relative sizes of the economies, $4 trillion India, $4+ trillion Japan, $8.5 trillion in all. China is about $17 trillion. So, China is much larger in that sense. But I think if in terms of we bring our two strengths together, then 2 + 2 is not 4. 2 + 2 can be 6, 2 + 2 can be 8. And this is exactly what we've been talking about in terms of, the two economies getting together, the technologies, how we can mix and match the technologies, the human resources here in India, the technological powerhouse in Japan, and that can be a force multiplier in that sense. So, and I think this is what we have been talking about, because and since you asked that question, I think it puts in contrast what we are looking at from the Prime Minister's visit to Japan, and what are we looking in terms of the outcomes and in terms of the takeaways from Prime Minister's visit to China. So here it is with, we are going to a democracy with which there is a similar values, similar systems, and equally, if not more importantly, there is a huge trust, in terms of civilizational
that's the biggest factor.
That's the biggest factor, the spiritual affinity that has been there. And, it might have sort of been, I will not call it stagnated, but maybe not taken off at the speed, at the pace at which it should have over some years. But still the direction has been that we are coming closer together. As far as China is concerned, we'll be going there just to sort of, mend relations, to bring them back to what it was in the pre-Galwan time, and to ensure that, it doesn't get, the border doesn't get out of hand, manage the border in terms of trade as it is concerned, the huge trade deficit. Now, we do have a huge trade deficit with Japan also. It is not that we don't have a trade deficit. But it's not an issue. It's not an issue. It will not be an issue if there is that level of trust and that level of openness that we are willing to work together.